Towards the end of 2008, reports emerged that Stephen Norrington, the director of Blade and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, had been courted to write and direct a rebooted adaptation of The Crow. Over the following 2 years, updates following progress of the project would appear in various outlets. The ongoing producer of the series, Edward Pressman, would happily hype up the project when asked for details. He said Norrington's screenplay was finished and described the work as terrific. Well, terrific or not, the idea of rebooting, remaking, reimagining, or meddling in any way with the original was not an idea that was greeted with enthusiasm by Crow fans in the comment sections of anything related to the idea. The general consensus was that any attempt to release a new version was basically an insult to the legacy of Brandon Lee and that the idea should be scrapped. Others argued that the comic was an original work of James O'Barr and should be adapted and reimagined as many times as O'Barr allows it to be. But still, the topic of Norrington's all-new Crow movie was dogged by controversy and cynicism from the start. The feelings were that an actor lost his life making the original movie, and that the character of Eric Draven should simply be left alone. The idea of wheeling out a brand new reboot, whether based on the original graphic novel or not, was seen by some as nothing more than a Hollywood cash grab and an attempt to capitalize on Brandon's work. Shannon Lee, the sister of Brandon, was asked during a Reddit Ask Me Anything about the reboot, to which she answered, "I don't think they should remake The Crow." Pressman at the time would attempt to distance the remake from the original by saying, "The setting's the Southwest, the Mexico-Arizona area, and an urban setting, Detroit or Pittsburgh or something like that. There are 2 locations that the film's set. Its initial platform is in the Southwest, and then it moves to the big city in the North or Middle or Eastern America and then back. The Crow itself is a creature in this movie. It's not just a bird, it's got a personality and a character. Not like Godzilla exactly, but it's very different and has a more active role in the story. Obviously, it's a different time and a different idea, but I think Steven is a very talented fellow, and I'm very excited to work with him. I think it's a very different conception than the original film. After the first Crow, there were so many other films that were inspired by it, by its look. Steven is an artist himself, and he's created a very different visual idea." As the production looks set to receive a green light from Relativity Media, Norrington would say, "The producer and visual effects people are crunching numbers. We've opened discussions with major cast, but nothing's final yet. We're open to shoot in the summer, but nothing's certain. Cast and budget and schedules will no doubt continue to adjust all equations." The Wrap then published a story reporting that musician turned successful screenwriter Nick Cave had been hired to rewrite the screenplay. In terms of the potential aesthetic, Norrington would tell reporter Alex Billington that, whereas Proyas's original was gloriously gothic and stylized, the new movie will be realistic, hard-edged, and mysterious, almost documentary style. The response to this information was, in summary, not positive. Still, Pressman and Norrington marched on regardless. It was now October 2010, and in terms of who would play the iconic role, actor Mark Wahlberg's name was the first to be linked to the project. This news was swiftly followed by Norrington's exit from the project. Norrington was asked about the Wahlberg rumor and said, "I don't know about that story, but I can tell you that I'm no longer involved with The Crow." Norrington said that an unnamed actor had become interested in his and Cave's screenplay, but had then asked for a page-1 rewrite from a new writer. Norrington said, "As I'd gotten involved explicitly as a writer-director, my exit was inevitable. I developed a genuinely authentic take that respected the source material while moving beyond it, and Nick Cave came in and added more depth. I think the fans would have been pleasantly surprised." And as Wahlberg promoted his movie The Fighter, the website Cinematical asked for an update on his involvement. Wahlberg replied, "We never committed to making the movie. They talked to me about it, and there was a director attached who I was a fan of, and he's no longer doing it. We just thought about it. Is there something cool to be done there? But we're not committed to making the movie." 6 months later, on the 7th of April 2011, a press release from Pressman Films and Relativity Media was sent out to all outlets stating that they had just closed a deal that would see Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, the director of 28 Weeks Later, direct the new Crow movie, which was now being described as a reinvention. A quote from the press release reads, "Juan Carlos Fresnadillo is an incredibly talented and imaginative filmmaker. We are thrilled to have him at the helm. Edward Pressman would say, "The original Crow was groundbreaking cinema. Its gothic visual and musical ideas influenced a generation and cinema itself. With Juan Carlos, we have every confidence that his new Crow will have a similar impact on the contemporary audience." Everything was back on track. Or so it seemed for what was a scheduled September start date. 1 week later, The Hollywood Reporter posted an exclusive that Bradley Cooper, who was then starring in Relativity Media's title Limitless, had already met with Fresnadillo in Spain to discuss The Crow, and that the two shared a vision of what the material could be. And then, another week later, Relativity Media, who were set to be producing the film, entered into battle with the Weinstein Company in regards as to who actually owned the distribution rights to the movie. Burt Fields, the lawyer representing the Weinsteins, stated that there was an ironclad, legally binding contract signed by all parties which gave his clients the worldwide distribution rights to the film. Relativity countered by saying, "Actually, no, you don't." And negotiations broke down, and so the matter was now scheduled for a court hearing. Fields warned the world that while some people may submit to that kind of arrogant conduct, we're not going to do it. If anybody tries to buy these distribution rights in The Crow, they are buying nothing but a lawsuit, and they will get sued. Relativity then issued a statement that said, "This is yet another typical litigation suit from the Weinsteins, who have a long history of threatening lawsuits with the sole purpose of intimidation. If served, Relativity will seek immediate dismissal. While we expect these types of antics from the Weinsteins, we are shocked that a lawyer of Mr. Fields' caliber would make such false, reckless, and intentionally harmful statements to the press about Relativity. We intend to seek appropriate remedies for this misconduct. Clearly, this is a feeble attempt to create a press stir and a malicious effort to interfere with Relativity's development of the project." As the lawsuit rattled on behind the scenes, Cooper would exit the project. The star was now throwing himself into Alex Proyas' since-unmade Paradise Lost, and was set to star in David O. Russell's Silver Linings Playbook. Mark Wahlberg's name re-emerged as a potential star, as other sources cited Channing Tatum and Ryan Gosling as actors who producers felt could bring a fresh spin on the character. Fresnadillo would then swiftly follow Cooper out of the door. The director would depart the film after 5 months on board. Fresnadillo was said to have been offered a reboot of the Highlander franchise, which meant the director's chair on this ever-troubled production was now vacant again. Speaking to Empire, Cooper said,
"There really weren't that many ups and downs. We were talking about doing it because of Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, who I'm such a massive fan of, and then timing didn't work out, and then he just dropped out of it also. So I don't know what they're gonna do."
Yeah.
As we entered 2012, the lawsuit was settled with everybody now working in harmony. A statement read, "The lawsuit between Relativity Media and the Weinstein Company concerning The Crow has been amicably settled out of court, and the parties will continue to work on the film together as planned. In addition, Relativity Media has dismissed all of its claims against the Weinstein Company, and the Weinstein Company has dismissed all of its claims against Relativity Media." 1 day later, it was announced that a new director, F. Javier Gutierrez, had been hired. Gutierrez had made an impression with his directorial debut with the Spanish-language apocalyptic meteorite-heading-to-Earth thriller Before the Fall, which had earned itself several festival accolades. Wes Craven had courted Gutierrez about remaking the film in English language, as well as a reboot of Craven's own The People Under the Stairs. Edward Pressman would also contact Gutierrez following a viewing of Before the Fall. Pressman remembered that he had previously courted the director back in 2002, and now, a decade later, would offer him the chance to work on The Crow. Writer Jesse Wiggertow, who already had several prominent projects set up at various studios, was said to be writing an all-new screenplay. The project would then disappear off the radar for exactly 1 year as the new creative team began to assemble their own vision from the ground up. 6 months into that year, Cliff Dorfman, the screenwriter of the Oscar-nominated Tom Hardy movie Warrior, was brought in to take a look at the Wiggertow screenplay in its then form to see if he had any ideas. Dorfman had 6 months earlier seen his pitch rejected by Pressman Films in favor of Wiggertow. But now the pendulum had swung back, and Dorfman was asked to doctor and revamp the script and come up with his own take. Dorfman decided to rein in all of the liberties that had been taken with the graphic novel, the what-if elements that had seen the current script stray away from the source material. Dorfman wanted to return the story back to its roots, back to James O'Barr's original story. Wiggertow would now go uncredited, and Dorfman was the writer who would be taking the screenplay forward. In January 2013, the possibility of James McAvoy playing Eric did the rounds. Several websites ran with the story, which quickly gathered speed. McAvoy was even asked by Getty Media whether or not he would have any interest in The Crow, to which he replied, "It's not for real. I don't think it's materialized into anything truthful yet. It's just been rumor mill stuff." As Dorfman's script got the green light, McAvoy would eventually take a meeting, as is often par of the course along with every other available actor in Hollywood. But the first name to become publicly associated with Gutierrez's The Crow was actor Tom Hiddleston. Hiddleston would later play down his involvement and say that he had conversations about it, whereas Gutierrez would later say he was really passionate about the role. Either way, 1 month later, it was reported that Hiddleston had made a U-turn and was no longer interested or available. "I'm not sure why Hiddleston dropped out," Dorfman would say. As soon as the film was greenlit, the clock now began to tick down. In 2009, Pressman had made a deal with Relativity Media that gave the studio an option to a trilogy of Crow films. Now that the option had been exercised, Relativity had 3 years to begin principal photography, or the rights would revert back to Pressman. It was in May 2013 that Welsh actor Luke Evans became attached to the role. Evans had previously been considered at a time when he was unavailable, but now that Relativity Media had agreed to push back the start date to early 2014, the star of Dracula Untold and the Hobbit trilogy was said to be signed on and excited about the role. Soon after, James O'Barr was brought into the fold in a creative consultant and advisory capacity. Gutierrez had long sought the approval of O'Barr, and had long been campaigning to Relativity to get O'Barr involved on some level. O'Barr would eventually meet with Gutierrez, and once convinced this wasn't just another contrived attempt to exploit the original, he would travel to the Los Angeles studios to see the prep work that had already been done. O'Barr would talk to journalists at Comic-Con and say, "Before talking with him, I was 110% against it. There was no point or need for a reboot. In my mind, you could throw $100 million at it, put Johnny Depp in it, and have Ridley Scott direct, and it wouldn't top what Alex Proyas and Brandon Lee did. I explained all of that the minute Javier arrived. Remaking the movie was a terrible idea, and you'll never work in America again." Brandon was a friend, and I'd never do anything that hinted at betrayal. But what Javier told me was that he wanted to go back to the source material, be as faithful as possible, which would make it something entirely different. Proyas' film is stunning and stylized. I mean that in a good way, nothing negative about it. Going back to the original book and keeping it grounded and realistic and dirty and gritty, it really appealed to me. Even so much as carrying over the visual metaphors like horses and trains, where the street signs always say no exit or one way. Exploring it with a different attitude appealed to me. Gutierrez would say that, "I love the story. And I told them I'd do it because I love the story, but it's not a remake of the original. It's a new interpretation. Of course, we have to fill some parts and new elements, but there was so much beauty and passion to the original. A lot in there we could do that was never done. That's the main thing that captured my attention. We can do something original. The darkness, the beauty, the violence and love, that's what got me excited." A lot of fans responded to the original movie, but this is going to be different. This is going to give them some good gifts. We're going to pull some stuff from the original comic that's going to be tough, and we're going to do it in an original and artistic way. As the film began to enter an official period of pre-production, O'Barr would talk to Dread Central and explain that the director's plan was to make a page-by-page direct adaptation of the comic book, not a remake of the 1994 movie, but a near word-perfect rendition of the graphic novel. My metaphor is that there is a Bela Lugosi Dracula, and there's a Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, O'Barr would say. They use the same material, but you still got 2 entirely different films. This one's going to be closer to Taxi Driver or a John Woo film, and I think there's room for both of them. Part of the appeal of the Crow comics, after all, is that they can tell very different stories. It seemed for the first time that the film was finally up and running and all systems go. Relativity Media were hoping this would be a tentpole hit for the studio and the movie would spawn a franchise and create its own universe. But as the months started to roll by, the planned October start date came and went without a single frame of film of principal photography to show. It was now December 2014, and the director was starting to wonder whether or not, despite the hard work, passion, and enthusiasm, it would ever get off the ground. And so, he left. Gutierrez would later tell Jenkins that, "I'd been approached by Paramount after Before the Fall. They were trying to put together a sequel to the original Ring. I'd signed for that one, and because The Crow needed me for 100% exclusivity of my time, I couldn't commit to do that. Paramount was being very kind and very generous with me. I had to either move with both projects or let The Crow go. So I helped with the transition with the studio, with James and Ed Pressman." Gutierrez went off to Paramount to prep Rings. The Ring sequel was released on February 3rd, 2017, and would gross $83 million against a $25 million budget. The Crow, meanwhile, remained in a state of perpetual limbo. After the director's departure, the option expired, and very shortly after, Luke Evans was also on his way out. Evans was asked by Den of Geek whether or not things were proceeding. He replied, "It's not, no, not at the moment. The Crow is not for me. I think it's a little... I'm sure it's going to go ahead at some point, but I have other projects that are greenlit and ready to go, and projects that I'm very interested in, and, I can't wait much longer." And then a few days after that, Evans officially severed ties with the film, with his publicist confirming the news to the press. Now, yet again, there was no director or star. But there was still Dorfman's screenplay that was still attracting new actors to the project. A draft of the screenplay leaked onto the internet via various private script trading sites, and the plot leak wasn't warmly received. It's uncertain if the draft that circulated was to be a final draft. It's unlikely, as any new director would probably rip the whole thing up and start from scratch, as had been the pattern so far. In terms of differences from the graphic novel, we learn through flashbacks how the characters of Eric and Shelley had known each other their entire lives after growing up in the same Christian orphanage. How as adults, they fell in love, became engaged, and bought a house. The adult Eric was no longer a mechanic, as in the book, or a guitarist, as in the movie. Instead, Eric would grow up to be a religious police detective who was murdered in a conspiracy right before he's set to propose to Shelley. Eric is murdered within the opening scenes and returned as the Crow. He begins to piece together what happened as he returns to his old home. In the book, Eric's face was white because he was no longer alive. And in the original movie, he paints his face with theatrical makeup. Here, Eric paints his face like the Greek theater mask of Orpheus because he has no reflection once resurrected, but with the painted mask, he does. He dresses in a Halloween costume that is a theatrical 1920s Dracula-style tuxedo. The Crow itself then lands on his shoulder. Writer Dorfman would later say that, "Everything I do, I go back to Greek mythology. First of all, it was my favorite to read as a kid. Second of all, it basically gives you every hero's journey you're ever going to need in the highest stakes way in the most non-grounded worlds. And you could put it in any form you want. I started rereading all these different myths, and I came across the story of Eurydice and Orpheus. The reference seemed fittingly appropriate in that Orpheus, in Greek tragedy, was a singer, musician, and poet, carrying a lyre on his shoulder. He had recently married Eurydice, but on the day of their wedding, in the very bloom of her life, she was bitten by a viper and died of its venom. Distraught with grief, Orpheus descended into the underworld, determined to restore her to mortality." Back to the story. Once he realizes that he's now all-powerful, with the ghost-like ability to pass through walls, Eric is guided by the Crow and the Skull Cowboy. He begins to investigate the murder of himself and Shelley. Rather than T-Bird from the novel, or Top Dollar from the movie, the crime lord who gave the orders for the murder in this script is a brutal mob boss, businessman type named Mulligan, who controls the city through fear, intimidation, and corruption. For the character of Mulligan, The filmmakers were hoping actor Forrest Whitaker would accept the role. Mulligan ordered the hit on Draven after he got too close to him in an investigation that had seen members of Mulligan's gang released following the destruction of a facility where evidence relating to criminal cases and investigations were being stored. Once the evidence had been destroyed, the cases fell apart and went away. This version of Eric would recite passages from the Bible, rather than the familiar Poe quotes from the movie, or song lyrics as in the book. Eventually, Eric kills his way up the chain of command, and many elements of the story would be familiar to anyone well-versed in O'Barr's graphic novel and Crow mythology. Immediately after the departure of star and director, that same December, it was reported that up-and-coming filmmaker Corin Hardy was next in line to be considered for the job after a personal recommendation from Edgar Wright. According to sources, Hardy had already put pen to paper on a holding deal worth $150,000, which would commit the director exclusively to the film for an agreed-upon period of time. Hardy had completed his first film, The Hollow, but the picture had yet to be released and was set for premiere at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2015, after which he would begin meeting with potential cast members in order to rebuild the Crow in his own vision. Dorfman's script was sent around to agents and actors looking to get involved, and it was assumed by Relativity Media that this was still the script that Hardy would be filming. Instead, however, Hardy would look to bring in Felipe Marino, his co-writer on The Hollow, and Dorfman was basically excluded from any further participation. Dorfman says the new writer refused to meet with him, despite the fact it was his script that had gotten the project greenlit on 3 separate occasions. Dorfman says, "I go, this guy won't meet with me?" They're like, "No, he refuses to meet with you." I said, "Okay, alright, that's his prerogative." The film was now no longer being called a reboot, and was instead being marketed as a new adaptation. Following the Sundance Film Festival, the next actor rumored to be in the early stages of talks was Jack Huston. The actor was now blowing up big after his standout turn as Richard Harrow in Boardwalk Empire. 3 months later, it was reported that Huston had officially agreed to the role once his work on Paramount's remake of Ben-Hur was completed. And then, 3 months after that, came the news that Huston had dropped out due to scheduling conflicts. Huston told Collider's Perry Nemiroff, "I was so excited about it. I was so sad. I had a great relationship with everyone. Luckily, that's all fine. It's a scheduling thing. It was just a scheduling conflict. We were all so jazzed to do it. It was one of the hard decisions that one can't do, and luckily they're brilliant, and I just want them to just go and make a great movie, so I'm just putting my heart out and saying I love everything about those guys." 1 month previously, actor Andrea Riseborough was said to have joined the cast in what was going to be a gender switch on the character of the lead villain. Riseborough was noted for her performances in Birdman and Oblivion, and while she read the Dorfman screenplay, a new screenplay by relative newcomer Claire Wilson, who had taken Corin Hardy's version in a fresh direction from all previous scripts. The film was now set to be shot in the UK at Pinewood Studios' new facilities in Wales. Producer Ed Pressman confirmed that the new film would aim to start shooting the following spring. Pinewood Studios told BBC News that filming would begin shortly, adding that it was to be the new studio's first major feature. Wilson's script was now rumored to be titled The Crow Reborn. Forrest Whitaker's name also re-entered the conversation, as the star was supposedly in talks for an unspecified role. As July 2015 came to a close, Relativity Media spoke reassuringly that all was well. They were very excited about The Crow, and that the film was still all set to meet a scheduled start date. 2 weeks later, Relativity Media filed for bankruptcy. Now, not only The Crow, but the studio's entire slate of output was to be put on hold. The Hollywood Reporter claimed that as pre-production on the movie had stalled in the UK, several department heads and other members of the production team had immediately jumped ship, leaving the future of Hardy's project uncertain. Or so it seemed. James O'Barr would speak at a panel hosted by the website comicbook.com. The artist told fans that it's still very much a live property. The company Pressman Films that owns the Crow film and TV rights licensed it to a studio named Relativity. And Relativity made like 100 bad movies and lost money, so now they're in financial trouble. So the producers are just going to take it to another studio if Relativity can't get backing again. It's going to happen. I talked to Pressman Films a couple of weeks ago, and they said within 2 or 3 weeks we should have it placed at a new studio. Because the day Relativity announced that they were having financial problems, there were like a dozen other studios that called about getting the Crow property. It definitely will happen. It was a sentiment echoed by Hardy, who told Entertainment Weekly, "The Crow's happening. I'm gonna make it. We were making it, and it was going very well until this Relativity situation occurred. But it's something that I'm very excited about, very passionate about. We're all waiting to resume pre-production. Ed Pressman is the producer. Creatively, everyone's excited. Relativity is sorting itself out, which I can't speak about. It's another fresh start. Basically, keep watching and early next year we'll be cracking on again." Actors Nicholas Hoult and Jack O'Connell were considered for a minute, but neither idea went anywhere as the project still sought out a definitive solution to its behind-the-scenes financial fiasco. As Relativity Media clawed itself out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy, it placed actor Kevin Spacey as chairman of the company, and producer Dana Brunetti was appointed as president. Spacey and Brunetti would oversee all creative content and film production for the company. Relativity CEO Ryan Kavanaugh said, "Both men share my passion for film, and I could not be more excited to partner with such talented professionals." One of Dana Brunetti's first decisions regarding what was described as the iconic Crow franchise, 5 days before he had even started the job, was to fire the director. Observers of the move felt that this was based on Hardy's inexperience as a director, and that this was simply a business decision designed to steady the ship. But Pressman, who had given Hardy's appointment his blessing, was about to torpedo that ship. 2 months later, Pressman filed court papers to deny Relativity Media the rights to make sequels, prequels, and remakes of The Crow. He claimed by firing Hardy they were in violation of contract. Pressman stated, "Hardy's known for his visual flair, having a penchant for horror and dark subject matter. The parties believed that Mr. Hardy was particularly suited to reinvigorate The Crow, which is based on a dark tale of revenge told originally in graphic novel form." Pressman would say that the decision to remove Hardy was done prior to Brunetti meeting Hardy or actually becoming head of production at Relativity. Pressman objected to the fact that his company wasn't consulted. The legal papers read, "The action purported to have been taken by Relativity on Mr. Brunetti's initiative with respect to Mr. Hardy has undermined years of work expended by Pressman and has wasted valuable resources invested in the picture." Hardy moved on to other projects, but with a veteran Hollywood producer like Pressman in his corner, there was still a good chance he'd be welcomed back. And indeed, welcomed back he was. In August of the same year, it was announced that Conan the Barbarian and future Aquaman Jason Momoa had agreed to take on the role. It was the Dorfman screenplay that had first gotten Momoa to commit to the role, and the actor now seemed positively enthused at the prospect of starring in The Crow. Momoa posted a picture to his Instagram account that showed himself and Hardy celebrating the news over a pint of Guinness. The Wrap reported an exclusive that a new start date of January 2017 had been set. Then, 1 month later, Relativity Media were put up for sale, and the Crow project was snapped up by Samuel Hadidah's Davis Films, who would produce alongside Pressman Films. The Highland Film Group were to handle international sales, and the London-based Electric Shadow would acquire the rights to co-produce. Although, depending on your point of view, the good news was that the January filming start date remained in place. That was not to be, however, and another year would pass. In September 2017, it was announced that Sony Pictures had stepped in to acquire the all-important distribution rights and looked to hopefully begin a new franchise. It was unknown if Hardy and Momoa were still attached in the reshuffle, but alleged insiders said that Sony hoped the duo would come on board once the fine print of the deal had been inked and confirmed. A new release date of October 11th, 2019 was now placed on Sony's calendar. Filming was to start as soon as possible on location in Budapest, Hungary. Alex Proyas, who was not only the director of The Crow, but a close friend of Brandon, had been asked many, many times across the previous 7 years about his thoughts on the various attempts to redo The Crow for a new audience. On the 3rd of December 2017, Proyas would write a piece on his personal page to clarify his thoughts on the matter once and for all. Beneath the heading, "Why I Think The Crow Should Not Be Remade," Proyas wrote, "I was privileged to know Brandon Lee. He was a young, immensely gifted actor with a great sense of humor and a bright future ahead of him. I was also privileged to have been able to call him a friend. Our working relationship as actor-director went beyond mere collaboration. We crafted a movie together which has touched many people. I did not take a film by credit on The Crow. I wanted it to be Brandon's movie, because it was, and because he would not be able to make any more movies. He brought all his passion to the movie, and it has lasted as his legacy. It is a film I know he would have been proud of. I finished the film for Brandon, struggling through grief, along with the hugely supportive cast and crew who all loved Brandon to complete it in his absence. We were imbued with the strength of Brandon's spirit and his inspiration. Not only Brandon's wonderful work as an actor and a filmmaker, but as a man whose humanity had touched us. The Crow would not be a movie worth remaking if it wasn't for Brandon Lee. If it wasn't for Brandon, you may never have even heard of this poignant little underground comic. It is Brandon's movie. I believe it is a special case where Hollywood should just let it remain a testament to a man's immense talent and ultimate sacrifice, and not have others rewrite that story or add to it. I know sequels were made, and TV shows and what have you, but the notion of rebooting this story and the original character, a character Brandon gave life to at too high a cost, seems wrong to me. Please let this remain Brandon's film. The Crow Reborn was a matter of weeks away from filming when lead Jason Momoa and director Corin Hardy both quit due to the internal bickering at boardroom level. Sony were now on the verge of backing out as worldwide distributor. Davis Films still held underlying rights and were the ones providing the financing, and it seemed that a number of creative and financial differences between themselves and Sony had caused the whole thing to come crashing down again. Even people who don't consider themselves superstitious at this point had to admit that it did seem as though the very elements of the universe itself did not want this film to be made. As Momoa left the role, he again took to Instagram and wrote, "I've waited 8 years to play this dream role. I love you, Corin Hardy and Sony Pictures. Unfortunately, I may have to wait 8 more. Not our team, but I swear I will. James O'Barr, sorry to let you down. I won't be on the next. This film needs to be set free. And to the fans, sorry. I can't play anything but what this film deserves, and it needs love. I'm ready when it's ready. Love you, Corin. Aloha, Jay." In August of last year, Hardy still held a torch for the project, saying, "It's a story that I'm just in love with and wedded towards, and I put 3.5, 4 years of life into, and love and blood and sweat and tears, and I have a ton of materials, so I don't know whether one day... I suppose I'm not really wanting to show them because I still believe there will be a Crow sometime, but we'll see. I do think both James O'Barr's original Crow graphic novel and the subsequent other iterations of that character in the comic books mean there's no reason not to do a lot more with that character. The concept of the Crow, the mythology of the Crow, and the tone and what that represents is still unique within the world we're in at the moment. And that about brings us up to the present. While a vocal section of the fan base don't seem to want a new Crow movie, there is one man who does, and that's producer Edward Pressman. As recently as March 2022, he told IndieWire that he and his partners expected to announce a new director and cast in the near future. The Crow is a kind of anti-superhero, unique to the world of graphic novels, he says. And so concludes another saga of lost projects, unrealized creativity, controversy, drama, lawsuits, broken promises, dashed hopes, Hollywood red tape, and the ever-present bureaucracy of development hell. As always, thanks for watching.